Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Astro Studio, where you get a look behind the scenes of the work of the astrologers you love to learn from. I'm your host, Sarah El-Harar, and today I'm talking to my very good friend, Martin Sebastian Moritz, who is a German psychological astrologer, a beloved teacher, a couples therapist, lectures all over the world, international men of astrology lecture in the US, in Italy, in Germany, in Austria, in Switzerland, and the UK. He wrote to this most incredible book on the eighth house, which I mean is we're going to talk more about it. I really love it so much. Pandora's box, the mysterious eighth house. And so this is, ladies and gentlemen, Martin Sebastian.
Ah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I mean, hello, this is brilliant. I mean, we just met in May, so we've only known each other for half a year, which is nothing, but it seems like we've known each other before, wouldn't you agree?
Right? It's very I love when that happens, when you meet somebody and you speak the same language, it's the same frequency. It clicked really quick. It all happened over breakfast.
It
Over
did. I mean, greasy, syrupy American breakfast, and I think we both bonded, you know,
yeah.
over the sort of like weird European background because you are very European, you're French, la 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 la.
Yeah.
Plus, we very soon found out that our Venuses are conjunct.
Uh,
So we were Venusing, oh la la.
We've it's been this thing all along. And it's so great when you meet a friend that you know is a friend. And we had both very silly and shallow and very deep and powerful conversations as we would. And so I'm so happy to share you with my community and the people who study astrology because I really think like meeting you was incredible, reading your book, listening to your class, just and knowing your mind is so cool. So I'm so happy to share you with the people, Martin.
Ooh.
So tell us a little bit. Let's start at Astro introduction. Like, what's your big three? Say your big three for the people so they can like cast type you.
Three people that can cast type me in the astrology community or where?
The three, your big three signs, your sun, moon, and rising.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the big three. So I have Virgo rising, I have Moon in Aquarius, and Sun
Drum roll.
in Taurus. Mm, mm.
Uh, I feel
Yeah,
Tauruses, is that a thing? Do you think Tauruses love each other and we love our sign and it's immediate when a Taurus meets a Taurus, but we're like, ah, do you feel
I always feel at ease. There is a certain physical coziness because Taurians are very sensuous people. They love to give each other hugs. They love to feed each other. And yeah, so my business partner from my market research company came by the other day and he's like this really tall, handsome guy. I mean, 2 meters. So he's towering me, which seldom happens, and he's a Taurus with a Venus Sun conjunction, and he absolutely loves to hug me. So whenever he goes, oh, so let's have another hug, and I said, yeah. So I'm game. So that's brilliant.
I
It's a
love
cool sign. I mean, with a lot of downsides, but which sign hasn't? I mean, come on, very
right.
stubborn, very slow sometimes. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's our stuff. So, okay, so let's start at the beginning of Martin, like who you were before you were an astrologer. We were talking about it a little bit before.
Yeah.
Like who were you before you met astrology? Um, who was younger?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were like many overlaps. So I have Gemini intercepted in the 10th house. So from the beginning, I was, a bit of a jack of all trades. And my mom and dad were really young. They were 17 and 19. So I got to spend a lot of time with my great grandmother and her companion. And my great grandmother was a brilliant storyteller, and I soaked it up. And she was a Aquarius with moon in Taurus, so
Oh,
and it
I
was a
love
brilliant combination.
this
And I mean,
cross.
I absolutely loved her to pieces. And I think the seed of wanting to share things, stories with other people was, you know, came into my life like from the start, because she and her companion were sort of like the grounding, loving core that I carry on. Because I mean, my mom and dad were really young. They went out partying all the time. I mean, bless them. I mean, I love them also. So, but I mean, and that's, so also being a gay kid wasn't, very easy. So I grew up on the one hand very spoiled rotten and very protected, and at school it was like a shock because I'm an only child. So, and I said, what, there are other children, what? Just okay. And then I realized, because I had a stutter, I was really awkward with my body, but still I wanted to become a ballet dancer. And my dad said, no fucking way. So he sort of like ruined my chance of becoming like a boy, to find a safe haven, if you will. So when I was 16, I went to ballet, and later on I became like a back chorus dancer at the opera. And then I became an actor. I was on the stage, and I also, I studied English, I studied history of art. So I did a lot of stuff simultaneously. But astrology came into my life when I was like 16, because my birthday is the 20th of April, which usually is Sun in Aries. So I grew up fancying myself an Aries, and my mom told me that I was born at around noon-ish, which would have made like a Leo ascendant. And then I bought my first cookbook, as it were, when I was 16. So my dad, of all people, bought me a book, Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb. And little did he know that that was about a spiritual self-exploration. He didn't know that. He said, oh, Martin is into Hollywood film star, so come on. For my birthday, I think it was for my 14th. And in that book, she mentioned like astrology. And then I bought several other books. And that kicked off a whole journey of self-awareness.
Hold on.
So,
Wait.
yeah, yeah,
So your first entry into like the spirit world type of
yeah,
thing is through Shirley MacLaine.
yeah.
And the book that your dad, who didn't let you go to ballet, like still bought you a Shirley MacLaine book.
Yeah, he didn't know it was about spiritual
Oh,
conquest. And so my dad is like an atheist, and half of my childhood spending with my great grandmother, because she was a Seventh-day Adventist churchgoer. So I grew up very religious. And when I went home to my mom and dad, you
sorry.
know,
Can
Seventh-day Adventist church.
Yeah, I want you to explain to me a little bit because I suck at all the nuances. So can you explain to me what the difference is with like your regular
Yeah.
Catholic?
So it's a funny combination of Judaism and Christian roots. So you go to the synagogue on a Saturday, but they wouldn't call it synagogue, they would call it church. And they would refer to each other by saying like brother and sister. and then the family name. So I would be Brother Moritz, you would be Sister Lahar.
I love it.
You would use in German the not courteous form, but the informal form. So they would say du and not sie. And for me, that was a whole adventure because I grew up with the Bible, and that's like the most, you know, captivating Netflix series you could grow up with as a child. That was mind blowing. And my best friend was Jesus. So I found myself talking to Jesus the whole night. Said, Jesus, you are my friend, aren't you? You know.
I,
My dad said, there is no God. God is shit. So it took me years and years and years
a
to
true
forgive my father.
a true German philosopher, a post-Nietzschean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
you know, there is no
that really sucked. That really sucked. But my dad, you know, said sorry many, many years later. And you know, I said, okay, you didn't know better. So okay.
So you're starting to read books, you're like 16,
Mm-hmm.
17,
Yeah.
you're starting a little bit like, and so you said you cast your first chart and you figured out,
Yeah.
I'm a Taurus.
Yeah, so I got hold of my certificate, and the certificate said like birth time a quarter to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And that, of course, makes for 3 degrees Virgo. So all of a sudden, I had a sun at 030 Taurus and an ascendant at 3 degrees Virgo. So I was no longer an Aries with Leo rising, but you know, a Taurus with Virgo. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, little Martin, right? And then I said, oh, that's interesting. And then I got hold of, oh, there is the Venus. So I just spent time at Lake Como with a bunch of Australians, and they have like the funniest accent. It's like Venus, Venus. And I said, well, so are they talking Cockney? But no, it's Venus. I said, oh, you mean Venus? All right. And Mars. And then I pretty soon got hold of like, so Venus in Aries, Mars in Taurus won't wash. You're burning in hell forever. So that's not good. I said, oh shit. So I, you know, cursed with a shitty chart. And then I think when I was 18 or 19, I had my first class with
You,
a really shitty teacher, by the way. So I
where
broke
did you
in Hamburg, and he was this weird guy claiming that he was able to change his sun sign because he thought that Aquarius would not be an appropriate sign for such an angelic, beautiful creature he was. So he changed sun signs and became a Libra. And I said there like, interesting. But I mean, I I broke in with, you know, how we all break in by learning by heart all the placements in each sign, in each house. And this is what I always try to teach my students. Like, this is the easy part, to learn by heart the placements, but to combine that, to go on a more analytical level, to see the big picture. And that took me like, I don't know, 10 years, because I gave readings forever and ever. But I over prepared myself, like, you know, copying chunks and chunks out of cookbooks, overloading my poor clients. I didn't charge, by the way. So because I thought I wasn't good enough. So I said, oh, okay. And then you have Saturn in Libra. So let me read to you what that means. And then you have Mars in, and of course, everybody left like,
yeah.
you
You know,
know what I'm saying.
thing I speak about with my students a lot as well. Like I tell them, like, don't copy paste your answers
Yeah.
from Google. Don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah,
come from you and from a deep knowing and an embodiment of the thing, then what's the point, you know?
yeah,
Especially now in the age where people can find all that information so easily. It has
exactly, exactly.
absolutely almost no value in a reading. But
That's true.
can you go back there a little bit, like when you were starting? So you're
Mm.
at that point, so let's say you're okay, 18, 19, 20, you're at university, you're starting to take like these side astrology classes, maybe giving readings to your friends, looking at their chart, curious.
Yeah,
What were
yeah,
you studying? Because you became you studied acting and
yeah. And then I was engaged for the theater in Bonn, which was the old capital of Western Germany. So I didn't have much time to do astrology, but I did astrology always. So when I broke in, we had to look up every placement in the ephemeris. We had our calculated, and we had to draw the chart. And I found that really, really grounding. And I mean, it's like you draw a piece of art. So the whole chart just slowly is created. And then you say, okay, now you have Pluto. Oh, this is a trine, right? So I need like a red pen and draw in like a square or a blue pen for, and that took like a whole evening to do just one chart. But for me, it was like, okay, so it was almost like a sort of like meditation. And then I was equipped with a chart, and then I could go out and say, okay, fancy reading? Anyone? But most of the time, I did it for myself, and I attended more schools, more certificates, but it was always like I picked up like really odd schools because when you get out into the world, you might get overwhelmed and then you just pick and mix. And it took me years to realize, oh, there is karmic astrology. Oh, there is psychological astrology. Oh, this would be my shtick. And then I began to read Les Green, Howard Porters, because in the 1990s, there was this wave, this new age wave. And that was like, so the air was thick. You could almost like smell it. And everybody was like, oh, there is this thing going on called spirituality. There is the thing going on, tarot, astrology, but it was still like a niche thingy. It wasn't it wasn't as popular as it is today. It was still like something you have to defend yourself by doing that because like hold on, I thought you had a diploma, you were an intelligent guy and you're doing astrology, excuse me. And I said, yeah, but there is something to it. And, always finding yourself in that position where you have to defend yourself. It's not very cool, right? Then I started because being an actor was draining. I lost, I think, 15 pounds because it was such a draining job. So I was on stage every day for 7 days. We never had time off. Then I had a stomach ulcer. And then I realized this isn't working out for me. This is not the job. I have the talent. And being on stage was a joyous experience, but everything else was horrible. So I found myself homesick. I mean, I missed my flat. I missed my then boyfriend. I had a cat then. I had my own flat. And I mean, homesick and have your heart broken. These are the most horrible feelings I've ever known. So I decided I wanted back to Hamburg. And I thought, well, if you are such a homey person, acting isn't going to work out because you have to be flexible. You have to be able to say, okay, the next engagement is here or there, or the next, film or TV or what have you. So I needed a plan B, and that was psychology. So when I was 25, I studied psychology, which was the best decision I've ever done, ever. And that was such a journey.
Oh my God, and I can imagine that it took your astrology consulting to the next level, right?
It did.
Lets you make a session be like a healing thing. So you're 25, you
Mhm.
started learning psychology, and then when did you start your practice?
So it all sort of overlapped because I started to do my moderating job in market research, and I started to become a psychodrama therapist. So I did that for 10 years. And that's like really, really deep work because you have to work with groups, you have to be in command, you have to bring out all the different characters inside yourself. You have to be really on your guard. And this is when you really get to know other people and yourself. And then yeah, go on. No, no,
Tell
no, go
me
on.
more about that, about psychodrama. Is it a little bit like I imagine it to be like what family constellations are like a little bit? Is that a
Mm,
little the same way? Can you explain that?
Yes and no. So there are two levels. Level one is externalize. So it's a group setting, and you could, for example, select someone out of the audience and say, "You will be my father."
Mm.
And then you would have to be the father, and the one interviewing, doing the whole thing, would interview you, Sarah, as your father. And the other person would listen, and then you would change. And then he would repeat because he will be your father, you will be Sarah again. And then you would change and change and change. So it's a psychodynamic thing. And the other level is internal. So you might bring up your inner child, or you would bring up your inner saboteur, and all of a sudden you have all these people on stage, and you have to say, okay, this is the inner saboteur, but this again is your father. So approach your father with, this is my inner child, this is my inner saboteur, and whenever I am stuck with you, dad, I'm speaking from this or from that, blah, 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 blah. So this is like, wow, mind blowing. And this, of course, took my astrology to another level because I didn't shy away from confronting aspects, because that was the time when I realized how crucial the aspects are. And I think we had that conversation the other day, like, what does it mean to have like a sun in Scorpio when you, for example, have like a conjunction with Neptune, or an opposition with Venus. So it changes the game. And then I came to realize that nobody is like the run of the mill default sun sign. No, ma'am, there is no way. And once you scratch that, it's it's much more comfortable to explain that to your clients, because they would realize that, you know what, I never found myself so typically Scorpio or what have you. There was always something else going on. And then you would say, okay, this is on account of this and that. And then they would say, because, and I always follow that rule, is what people really yearn, what they really long for, is to get acknowledged, to see, I get you, not judging you, but I'm getting you. And astrology, of course, is one toolbox to achieve that, a very powerful toolbox and a very elegant toolbox coming to that. And some people respond very well to that because they feel, this is me, this is my chart, and I'm handing it over to you. I trust you to make sense of it, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. And so do you find that you use some of the psychodrama tools in your sessions of astrology? Like, do you make the parts talk to, like, how does that like really influence what you do now with your clients?
I used to have what I call kitchen readings, And I had this collection of little, play figurines and saying, okay, this now is Venus talking and this now is blah, blah, blah. But I'm not doing that anymore. So I've changed. I mean, I have to tell you, I've changed the way I do readings several times to keep a fresh mindset. And these days, it's all about breaking ice. It's not about me impressing my clients with all my knowledge, because I thought, no, this is a narcissistic thing. You are here for your client. So find out what he or she needs, build up a rapport, take rather 90 minutes than 60, and then just pick out one teensy weensy aspect out of the whole chart, because that's what they would want. Maybe they are in a crisis. Maybe they're about to, move away, or they come and say, oh, I've just been experienced this and that. And they say, okay, let's look at, secondary progressions, transits, and all of a sudden you're game, but you need the extra 20 minutes to break the ice, to make them realize. And I always start with sun and moon, and by the mother-father relationship. And I can always sort of like sniff that out, if you will. Like if the moon is challenged, you would know there are deeper mother issues. And that's what I'm writing about at the moment. This is my next book, Mommy Dearest, the role of the moon. And I find that captivating. And when I'm doing couple thingies, I always look at Chiron, because Chiron is the most intimate.
Okay,
pause. Okay.
Pause. Let's go to couples for a second. So
Yeah.
you were doing psychodrama. You're not doing that anymore in your
No.
practice.
No.
Like a while ago.
Out of fashion. It's been out of fashion for 20 years now, which is a shame, but it's out of fashion.
But
like 15 years now.
right. And so, but now part of the things that you do is that you have a couples therapy practice.
Yeah.
And then your astrology practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when did that happen? When did you start seeing couples as a therapist?
So we have to include my astrology journey to
Please.
around where I'm now, because this is sort of like a continuous thingy. Because
right.
at
Work
point,
parallel.
yeah. So at one point, I found myself surrounded by people who wanted to learn about astrology. So I started off with, in my living room, having like 10 friends or acquaintances. And then I realized, so this is really interesting and I like to teach. I didn't know that I had this teacher inside of myself. And then I met this lady who ran a Hamburg, Berlin school, and she employed me. And that's like a long, long, long time ago. And she said to me, you have the makings, because I like your chart. This is a teacher's chart because I have a full 9th house. So I have the sun in the 9, I have Mercury in the 9, I have this blasted yacht going on, but who's complaining? So I ended up being in charge of the Berlin shop. And that was really gratifying, because she handed over all her material. And then I realized, no, I don't want it to do that way. I want to make my own charts. And by that time, I had been in marketing for 10 years. And part of marketing is you have to tell stories. You have to draw PowerPoint charts and you have to present the results. So I was very much that. So I combined like getting across content in a visually pleasing manner, because I'm a Virgo rising, so I have really high standards of things have to look nice for me, and other people like it as well. And the other thing was, since I was an experienced, group leader, so self-awareness groups, and that's what my students loved. So we always had this session, okay, this is the content. Listen and listen good. And after the break, it will be about you. We will be sharing your charts, and it will be like a self-awareness group. And people loved that. And friendships built on that. So I'm still friends with some of them. You know, Antje, for example, she was one of my students in Berlin. And then it sort of gradually developed, like doing it online. And in between, I lived for a couple of years in the UK. I had a marketing job there, and I took a breather with astrology because it was too much. But then I got to know the CPA, the Center of Psychological Astrology, and I took classes with Lynn Bell, and I realized, wow, this is what I want to do. And then I said, okay, so astrology and the English language. And this sort of like ignited a different part of my brain, which never left me. So it really was a gradual thingy. So teaching in German and then doing consultations in English, then teaching in English, then being online in German, being online in English, and then spreading around, being a speaker first in German, Swiss, Austrian, conferences, and then taking it to the next level and doing it in the UK. And that was so, I mean, looking back, that was like fucking hard labor. I really worked my ass off with everything I did: market research, psychodrama, astrology, everything.
There's something to be said about experience that is gained over years,
Yeah.
being exposed to different teachers, to reading different books, seeing your culture, seeing the industry transform through the years, right?
Mm.
Seeing how it was, like it gives you your understanding of the things when you talk about them. Like we can really hear the level and the depth of your knowledge that is
Mm.
only you can only acquire it with that number of years, I really think.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And also, this is something because I grew up a very shy child. I told you that I had a stutter. And as an actor, of course, I had elocution lessons, I had singing lessons on stage, I had to dance and sing. So I really had to overcome my shyness. And then being a public speaker, of course, you can't let people show that you're shy. You have to build up like a persona. You have to become the best version of yourself, as it were. While on the other hand, working with so many people in market research, in psychodrama, in astrology, in couple therapy, I really realized that I fell in love with other people because I have so much respect for other people, for their biographies. And I'm, one of my passions is history. Another passion is biography work. It's brilliant. So one of the best classes I ever took was this biography work. So I had this brilliant teacher who said, okay, look back at your biography and just trace out Uranus, Pluto, all the transit, and then come to realize what was going on in your life and what that planetary movement was meant to ignite. And of course, in hindsight, it's much easier because one of my really most hurting transits was, hold on, so Neptune, I mean, no wonder I'm getting hazy and murky. Neptune sitting at my moon, getting back and forth. So I had my heart broken. I was in a very horrible place, and I lost almost any sense of who I am, who I was. And that coincided with my Saturn return. So I really know how people feel when they are in a fucking crisis. I know that. I feel that. I fucking feel that. And to overcome that, it's like, you know, I'm still carrying an invisible tiara around for,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. Such a hard
100%.
time.
This is one of the things that Deborah Silverman, my teacher, she does with her clients and she's trained me to do, which is to look back at past cycles with the client,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
understanding a thread as it's unfolding.
yeah.
Um, this is like super, super important work to be able to do. So for to be able to spend the time to really go planet by
Mm.
planet and seeing when they hit your stuff, it really changes everything. And so do you do that with your clients a lot now? Like, is this one of the things that you do with your clients?
So this is what I would do with my classes or with clients who would come back and back and back for more, you know. But this is definitely because like this is the second level, the transits, which would also include biography work. Absolutely.
So when
And
you initial reading, usually it's natal reading. You don't include transits or progressions in that initial reading, let's say.
it depends because people approach me with all sorts of questions. So sometimes they, sorry, just want to share time with me and, you know, talk about their chart because they find that inspiring. Sometimes they're really like, let's kick ass. My girlfriend is about to break up with me. Can we please look at my transits? But these would be the sort of people who have like a half knowledge already. So this is the sort of clients who I seem to attract. So with a sort of like half knowledge, even like already have done astrology, but they are unsure about the next level. And I always say that the the last level is to make sense of all the contradictions. And that's what so many students, and quite understandably so, because it took me a decade to get my head around it, that we are all bloody fucking contradictory. And if you find yourself surrounded by people who want complexity reduction, they have another thing coming. Because if you are like an astrologer, like for real, you will find that, you know, it gets more complex, not less complex. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. And I think some people that are going to be listening to this are going to laugh because this is literally a thing that I repeat to my students all the time. Like this thing about contradictory. You don't make sense. You don't need to make sense. It
No,
can't fit in a box. There's no template. You are these things don't match.
it's true.
And we all feel into our own awkwardness, like, oh, the way that I don't match is
Hmm.
the wrong way to not match. But everybody's not matching so beautifully,
Yeah.
right?
And you know what? People come to me usually after their second, no, their first, and no, scratch that. So after their first Saturn return, and then in their 40s and 50s, and I mean, more often than not. And I have the ruler of the 10th house in the 8th house, Venus. So scratching the surface, confronting, this is my game, right? So whatever I do, so I can be a very funny guy, and you know, you can have a good laugh with me, but I'm also that sort of guy who scratches the surface. And it's so often that I find myself in a position that clients need to realize that they have been idolizing that they have been dreaming about a sort of version of themselves. So I have to become, you know, career-wise, this and that. I have to have so many children, so and so many children. I have to live in a nice home. I have to have this sort of husband. And of course, all these bubbles burst. Because, I mean, let's face it, a client coming to us being in a happy state of mind, no, it's not going to happen. It's a waste of money, isn't it? So most of the time, they are in a hard, you know, in a sort of like, help me out. I need answers. I need guidance because I'm suffering or I'm having a hard time getting my head around this
It's
and that and that.
the reading. Right. It's most.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have a lot of earth going on in my chart. So I'm not this sort of like bubble building sort of astrologer. No, I'm the sort of astrologer who says, okay, let's really go down that lane. What would you have liked your life to become? What is the version of yourself that you thought, oh, I have to become this person? And then to like really gently, of course. And if there is too much resistance, I won't go there, to be sure, right? But I find it helpful to make people realize that they are already on their path to become the best version of themselves. But more often than not, we have to have our hearts broken or have to be like, ah, that didn't play out. Or so basically, it's just like the way my life is working out. It's not on the menu. I didn't order it. So astrologer, so explain that to me. What's on my menu? So it's your job. And I said, well, yes and no. Let's do that together, actually. And I'm also hearing myself talking to myself whenever I'm talking myself, uh, talking to clients myself. Well, Martin, listen and listen good. This holds true for you too. So yeah, okay.
Oh
Do you
my
know
God.
what I'm?
The two
Yeah.
things are so important. So one of the first things that I was thinking about is when a client will come also with a problem and just like hand you the problem and to ask me, should I
Yeah.
break? And I
Yeah.
say, okay, wait, hold up. So first of all, don't do that. Don't ask strangers to solve a problem.
Run your life. No.
Do that. Second of all, what is the answer that you secretly wish that I would tell? You're coming to the astrologer looking for confirmation for something that you secretly wish. So can we get there together?
Mhm.
With like, what's my purpose? And a lot of the times I want to tell people who ask me what's my purpose, like, okay, you should have been a ballerina. Sorry, you missed your purpose. Nobody told you when you were 6 you were supposed to get to the ballerina school at 6 a.m. And now, sorry, you lost it. Because of course it's not like that with your purpose.
I couldn't agree more. So it's two things here. A, I do talk a lot with my clients about talents. And I said, well, a talent per definition is sort of like a passive thingy. So you might find yourself blessed and highly favored with a beautiful angelic voice, but do you work hard and want to become an opera singer? Because this is not going to happen by default. So this is the first step, and this is where the earth in the chart comes in. So you have to put effort into whatever is in your chart. It's not just magically going to happen. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is, and these are two tips I would like to share with whoever is watching or listening, is I always compare my own chart with the chart of the client, do a synastry, and by doing that, I would say, oh, this is what they want from me. This is what I can give to them.
I love it. Slow it down and
That's the
say
first
it
step.
again. Say it again, just so everybody hears it again.
Okay, so
Really great.
always compare your own chart with the chart of your client, and then you would know what you will be able to give them, A, and B, what they are looking to get from the session, and also where you find slight frictions or limitations. Okay. And the other thing is, and this is a book I'd like to share with you guys, it's called The Consultation Chart by a wonderful astrologer who runs the London Lodge, which is the London shop of the UK AA body of astrologers. And I have been invited there several times. And I love all her books, but this is one of her best ones, because here you literally have like, okay, what if the consultation chart has like Gemini rising? Don't expect any sort of clarity. You would find that your client is of two minds, or if it's within the last 3 degrees, it's already gone. And I'm sure you agree with me, Sarah. Sometimes only in the last like 15 minutes, clients cough up with the real shit which has been going on. Like, actually, I wanted to ask you if it's okay if I broke up with my boyfriend and so on.
We're saying goodbye. Thank you. Oh, one last question. My
Yeah.
God, people. Yeah. Yeah.
And more often than not, I find myself that I, as an astrologer, am serving as a sort of like the guy who will give his blessing to shit which is already going on, and they would leave that. So you think, and I said, okay, we've been talking about that. We've been going through the options. I have been explaining to you what the transits and the solar and whatever tool I was using. So either I would say, I think part of you has already been reflecting upon this, and you have just been using me to talk about it. So, like volleying back and forth, but it's up to you. So, if you want my blessing, you can have my blessing for anything you do or not do, because sometimes it's even more appropriate to say to people, you know what? You don't have to decide. You don't. And they said, what? This is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And then they come back and say, this was so helpful because the next day I got the job, or, I moved or whatever.
Yes.
Brilliant.
If it's confusion time, I had somebody the other day who had Neptune conjunct Mercury right now.
Yeah.
Transit Neptune was on Mercury,
Yeah.
feeling fog, feeling only questions, no answers. And I told her it's just not time for answers. It's time for questions. This relieves people.
I love that. I love that.
No, you can spend time asking questions now. Find the right questions, keep on asking questions, keep on and
Hallelujah.
answers.
Hallelujah.
That's really great. And the other thing that you had said that really like pinged me was this thing of like the astrologer giving the advice that's really for them. And
Yeah.
that also sometimes it happens to me when there's like clients that come with all the same signatures or all the same transit or the same rising, like exact. I'm like looking at the same chart. I have to verify. Oh no, I pulled the wrong chart. And I'm like, oh shit, they're similar people. And of
Yeah.
course, I have to like reiterate and say again the same thing. And then I realize that even if the transit is not in my chart, if
That's
it's
true.
a client's chart,
Yeah.
then I'm undergoing some of it.
Hmm.
Do you
I
see
know.
what I'm saying? Like by
Absolutely.
by osmosis.
And you know what? and I couldn't agree more. So I used to put myself under a lot of pressure. So I needed myself to be like the person who gives the right answer. I am the expert. And it has changed so much because now I find myself to be the person who will find the right questions for my clients. And they will leave with a list of brilliant questions. And I'm not the one to give the answers. No, ma'am. Uh-uh. I'm the wrong
What
astrologer for that.
happened? And the problem with you and me ever since we met is that everything we say, yes, exactly that. And this is exactly, we have like
Yeah.
this uni
Yeah.
mind. It's really funny. But I 100% agree. Like there's so much power in questions. People want the astrologer to give them answers, but actually, I think the work of astrology is to ask the right questions.
That's true. And also there is something, and you have a history in marketing as well, like trends and so. There
Yeah.
is something which is called like a white spot, which is like terra incognita, where the next trend is or so. And I think a chart can work that way as well. So more often than not, in particular when I work with women, doing moon work, doing Venus work, doing Black Moon Lilith work, I help them to acknowledge their femininity. And they would all of a sudden say, you know what? I never talked about that with anybody because I thought, like, is this me? And I said, sure, it's you. It's in your chart. And then they sort of like blossom. And as a gay astrologer, I find myself in like the best place to accompany my female clients to be on their journey of finding their best version of whatever woman they choose to become or not become. And being a psychotherapist, I'm not shying away from addressing painful shit like shame, and I must.
This book has a lot of that, of like deep, deep, um, I mean, it's the eighth house, so it wasn't gonna be anything but there's so many tools for doing that. And so is that why you decided to do the eighth house rather than anything else? Like, is
Yeah.
that because this is the house that allows you to go only as deep as you're
Okay.
wanting to go, right? Where else?
Okay, picture it. So I have um, Mercury in the ninth house, ruler of my Virgo rising, to be sure. In Aries in the ninth house, as you know, the base of a yard with Neptune and Uranus. And every astrologer who gave me a reading always pointed out that I was a sort of Mercurian sort of person. I said, what the fuck is that? And they said, well, it's teaching, learning, writing. And I said, writing? No, it goes right over my head. And when I started out in astrology, I bought these magazines and I read these articles and I was thinking, wow, who writes this shit? This is like genius. This is like, wow. And, like 15 years later, I found myself applying to the editor of the Swiss magazine. And she said, yeah, okay, hand in an article. And when that got published, I said, yay, I can write an article. And later on, I published something in the UK magazine on Lilith and RuPaul and, blah, 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 blah. And then I listened into one of Lynn Bell's brilliant lectures she did for the CPA or for MISPA. And it's so funny because something has come full circle because now I teach for MISPA, and her topic was vampires in the eighth house. And I can't tell you how often I have listened into that because she has a very sensuous voice. I like the way she talks. I love her sense of humor. I love that she is so freaking insightful. So I took that to the bank. I said, I want to take this further. So she talked about Lord Byron. She talked about the eighth house being a place where you can feed off other people or where you can run out empty. And as a psychologist, I thought like this is like really deep food for brains. And then I decided I want to make a book out of it. And that got me through the pandemic. And after that, I realized this has to be in English as well. So I found myself an English publisher. And then I chucked half of the chapters because I thought this is only insightful for a German audience. So I came up with new ideas. And also, it's boring to just translate your own words. You say, oh, English is so different than German. I said, so working, writing from scratch will give you the freedom of not having to compare that with the German original text. So
This is
that work on the eighth house was so joyous. That was such a piece of joy. I had such a brilliant time.
It's really deep and thorough and funny. I mean, there's so many the facts about the people, the chart examples, the it's a joy to read it. And your writing in English is really great, as is your talking, which is so funny because you were saying how you had a stutter as a kid and
Yeah.
how you're like a brilliant orator. Part of the things that I'm really interested in doing with my clients when I work with like becoming the adult, like
Yeah.
Saturnian kind of
Yeah. I
uh,
like that.
the work of becoming the adults that we needed when we were a kid.
Mhm.
That relationship, like you now as a public speaker in two languages, um, speaking, writing books, teaching, all of these things that must have felt so inaccessible. And yet you had the seed of the oak tree that you became, right?
Mhm.
Which is really crazy inside of you. So this and from your great grandmother, all of that storytelling that was like just boiling under your skin, and now being able to see this is like a really beautiful full circle kind of moment when you think about it. And the yod to Mercury.
So I used to teach a lot about the yard, and because and this is also how you know, I'm that kind of astrologer who has to do a lot of research, like compare charts, compare biography work, and then read books about that. And I said, okay, so what do I take out of it? And for example, the yard, which makes perfect sense to me. It's like a wobbly, three-legged chair. So you always find yourself wobbling around. So you will never become that guy who's like, I'm talking from my circle. And there is this brilliant by what's the author called? And I think it's a book or it's a documentary. It'll come back to me. It's called The Center Will Not Hold. And I could really respond to that because I constantly find myself being at three parties all the time. So I really have to spread myself. And I mean, come on, I have three jobs. I have, you know, I am in Berlin, I am in Hamburg, I'm an astrologer, I'm a couple therapist, I have my own market research company, blah, 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 blah. So for me, growing up in two households, for example, that sort of like set the dial for me, like this is normal. I so I never had like one home or one person or one job. And I think it's a vast difference. And I don't know quite if I admire people who are single-minded, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just like, okay, you just have your mind on astrology. And I was never like that because all the other stuff I did fed into my astrology and backwards. And so I think you can become, and I also think this is a taboo thingy because some astrologers don't want to admit that they are doing other jobs uh, beside of astrology because they would feel ashamed. And I've said, no, that's a brilliant solution, because if you really want only to depend on astrology, you have to run a risk, because you will be dependent on how many bookings you will have, and I don't want that pressure. So I'm a Taurus with Virgo rising, so I need my financial security, and I'm more than grateful that I have these other jobs as well, so I can relax. I can do astrology and I can earn money, but I don't depend on it, which makes all the difference for me, right?
I love that. I love how it's so it's also very mercurial in nature, which is, your chart ruler, the ability to do multiple things. There's something about the Mercury opposition with Jupiter for me, where Jupiter like really wants the specialty, the expertise. It's like depth of knowledge, but with Mercury, it's really about breadth of knowledge. And that's difficult to combine, and it's an art. And it makes mercurial people, those kind of like magicians. It is a magician archetype, you know?
That's true. And also, I mean, so I have Mercury quincunx Uranus, I have Mercury quincunx Neptune, so of course I'm a dreamy eruptive sort of guy, but also I have Mercury trine Jupiter. They're both at 25, and in secondary progression, Mercury has moved into Virgo, approaching my ascendant. And I feel that this is the moment in my life for which I have been waiting for fucking ever. Because now I realize I can be my own full canopia of whatever, is Martin. And this is such a joyous moment.
This is something that I would really like for like to the people who are listening to us, if they're at the beginning of their career with astrology or at the beginning of their journey, and there's this anxiety to like make it,
Yeah.
or and also this maybe this insecurity because, oh my God, all of these people are doing it and they're doing it so well, and you're just beginning and you're trying, but you have a feeling that this is for you. And this is a lot of the students that I'm around, and they're starting their practice. And sometimes I tell them, just like take off your shoes. You're here.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
Take off your shoes. This is for the rest of your life. This is a
Mm.
very Taurus mindset. This is forever. So there's a million books to read. You will never have read all astrology.
No.
You'll never know all of it. You will never have listened to all the podcasts and all the classes. Calm down. You're here. And there's something unraveling in the slow process of doing it and being with it quietly, not with
Mm.
the pressure of making it in astrology, which is not the same thing as becoming a good astrologer.
I couldn't agree more. Also, I think being in the year 24, I've finally come to terms with social media is not my enemy, but I can make use of it, get myself known to the world, and I just have to be my authentic self, because for years and years and years I always put myself under the pressure that you have either to become like this mega trendy, mega beautiful, like filtered out model sort of guy, and also you have to be like super insightful, so like feed the world. And then I said, actually, I don't like either of it in extremes, but I just want to share my funny little self with the world. And if they respond to with what I have to offer, hey, I'm game. But whoever would find myself either being too flippant or too deep, it's your fucking choice. So, and spending time with guys like you at Norwac was such a revelation for me, because I, I really, for the first time, I realized that we can connect with all these brilliant, quirky, brilliant, messed up astro peeps, regardless of the generation. I mean, it boils down to how many times you have been around the block, to be sure. But the passion we all share in astrology, that's the binding factor. And that makes up for such a strong possibility of bonding and feeling the love and the passion, right?
And it's crazy. Like the first time I went to a conference was at the ISAR conference in 2022, and it was a game changer. First of all, I had been working with Celeste for a number of years. There were
Yeah.
like Beth Wishman and stuff like that that I had been working with for us also a number of years, and we had never like seen each other. Sharon Lair, like all of these people, like getting to hug the first time you know,
To hug them. So you wanted to hug them, yeah, right?
wanted to see the people that I had been in community with for, 5 years prior, doing all of this really deep bonding over this deep work. And so now we're finally in the same place. But then you meet also the teachers that you've been reading their books.
Mm,
That's also something else, is that
mm.
we get to be in conversation also with our teachers and with people we've looked up to. There are people who have been, in astrology for a number of years, who wrote the books that we read. That's really also something. And then the sense of community is really magic, meeting people who are exactly on the same wavelength, same wavelength.
Same wavering. Always add an E. You do it so brilliantly.
Like the
Like,
uh the,
yeah,
the same wavelength as you, and but like it's really crazy. We made friends so easily, and yeah, this is like something special. To be in community really also takes the astrology life to another level.
also, I mean, get a load of this. Antje was my student in Berlin. Then she moved to London. Then she moved to the US. Then she had her own connections. And then she introduced me to you.
It's really
So,
crazy.
and we're talking about like 15 years here. So, a journey of like 15 years. So now she is the proud one and saying, "Oh, Martin, come on, let me introduce you to her and him." And I'm so excited. This is Martin from Germany. La 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 la. La. I said, "Wow, this is so cute. This is so endearing. This is so heartwarming."
And this is also somebody who, you have your parallel careers, and then she's doing such interesting work with astrocartography. And
Yeah,
it's like, it's so nice to also be able to network the minds and talk about the thing that we like the most together.
yeah, absolutely.
It's and we have a lot of fun
We do.
as well.
To be sure.
To be sure. We have a lot of fun when we're together for sure. And so, there's this question at the end of, did you used to watch Inside the Actor Studio?
I did. Yes.
You remember it was like this, the questionnaire of Proust that they used to do. And the last question that they would ask, and I really love that question. So let me try to remember it, how it goes word for word. But basically it goes like this. It goes, when you die and you arrive at the pearly gates,
Hmm.
what do you If there is a God, what do you hope he or she will say to you?
Okay, so when I grew up, the image I had from God or Jesus was
Jesus,
always always add an E.
I'm
It's
French.
it's
What am I gonna
is
say? Yeah.
and this is also like RuPaul is also a sort of like God-like entity because and I will going to do something for Insta because he's been on my mind. It's this inner saboteur versus the you got it, kiddo. If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? And I think having been around the block and having met so many people who have touched me and hurt me and vice versa, I think at the end of my life, I would wish for myself and for any entity to volley back on me on that. It's like, did you find in yourself love, love? Because did you manage to love yourself? And this is something I do with my clients. Like when you brush your teeth and look in the mirror, can you find it in yourself to say, I'm a likable person. I like myself. I like being myself. Not like, like narcissistic, I'm the king of the world. No, we don't want to go there, do we? But this teensy weensy little voice that say, actually, I like myself. Okay. If you achieve that, you can achieve any fucking thing. And that is what I strongly believe. And this is what I think we can help our clients find in their charts. Like, where is the self loathing versus where is the self love? So you have to work with Chiron, you have to work with the moon to be sure. When you work with women, of course, you have to talk about the way they see themselves as a woman, if they find that pleasurable or not. It's a long way, but it's a way, it's a long, long journey, but it's the only journey which is really, really worth all the trouble. And it never ends. I have a client who is 83, who is taking yoga and Spanish classes. And she always tells me, like, you will not be old until you cease to look for answers, to look for what's around the corner, what's the next goal. And so I mean, take me for instance. I have on my list like, okay, so the next level will be a podcast, the next level will be the next book, the next level will be offering in English what I've been doing in German for 15 years, like doing master classes in, I don't know, Lilith in the chart, Moon in the chart, whatever, because doing astrology in English really ignites something in my brain, which is, I mean, contagious. And I love the vibes I'm getting. And, this is brilliant. This is an international community.
I feel the same way about English. I used to write astrology in French for a little while.
Yeah,
Also, not being in France felt kind of like hypocritical. Like I don't really know French
yeah.
culture anymore. I've not lived in France for since I was 18. So
Mm.
I feel like fake French a little bit. You know what I mean? I can write it and speak it properly, but the culture doesn't, I don't know it anymore.
But you know what? This has rubbed off on you big time. It's part of your DNA and you exude it. You are so
Right,
French.
exactly. And so I bring it wherever I go
Yeah.
anyway. I have no other choice. It comes with me
Huh?
wherever I go. But it's true that the English language it feels different. It's international. When we speak English, really, we're speaking international. I have
Yeah.
clients from all over the world.
Mm.
And if I was speaking French, I wouldn't have, people in Qatar, people in, you know, different parts of the world that don't speak French.
Well, I mean, yeah, and also, I mean, um, and that's what I had to learn when I did elocution lessons. Though every fucking body has an accent. It's the way we grew up, where we've spent time. I spent time in the UK, so that rubbed off on me, and
Yeah.
and the films I watched, the TV series I watched. So people come to me all the time. You have such a funny vocabulary. Where did you pick that up? And I said, okay, Jane Austen, P.G. Wodehouse, Ed Fab, Little Britain, have your pick. It's all in me. I embody that sort of like richness of the English language. And since I'm a non-native speaker, I have so much appreciation because to me, this is wonderful. It's not anything I am taken for granted. I don't.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore the English language.
Yeah, it's really, really special. And honestly, it shows like your book is really wonderful. Is this on Amazon? Can people get it on
Yeah,
Amazon.com?
to be sure.
Get to be sure, put
Yeah.
this in your pipe and smoke it.
And pipe it and smoke it. Exactly. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Exactly.
This book, Pandora's Box on the Eighth House, I cannot recommend it more. It's really beautiful. The English
Yeah.
version, I don't know the German version, but this is
Yeah.
really great. The examples, the depth of it, there's some parts that are really surprising. Um, Shit, it's really excellent. Thank you for writing it. So people can get it on Amazon.com or .fr or .ca or .uk.co and or .mx. I don't know where your Amazon is from. They can find you on your website, which is astro-via.com.
Exactly. And also just type in Martin Sebastian Moritz and you will end up at my YouTube channel where I have English content as well. And of course, my Insta. I'm trying to grow my Insta and I'm trying to do
You
stuff.
please follow Martin on Instagram. You have great reels about a lot of things that are super interesting and always accurate. So people should follow you, should buy your book, should book you, should see you, should love you. Um, for me, I'm Astro Auntie. You can find me on astroauntie.com. If you need a vacation in January, I can't say it enough. I'm going to Costa Rica in January. I'm organizing with my friend this yoga and astrology retreat. It's a true reset moment for rest and restoration before starting the year. I also have a monthly new moon group called 13 Moons, which is a membership where we do the astrology of the month ahead. Subscribe of the YouTube channel, of Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, and come again inside the Astro Studio. Thank you, Martin.